Ironman Chattanooga course preview and a race review from 2 years ago with Matthew Roland today on the Do Hard Things Today podcast. Hal Morris, we are looking for some good vibes, man. We are here at the Hub City Runner Studios, and we are doing some race previews. You know what race preview means?
Means we got races.
That means
coming.
we're going to be racing.
That's right.
We're going to be racing. The Rubbin's racing. We've got Matthew Roland with us. He's a first-timer on the podcast. Welcome to the podcast.
Welcome.
Everybody, big clap.
Thank you.
Everybody, big clap there. We are, man, it feels good. We have been racing already, even though it's just been like a little 5K and some half marathons and things are coming, but we are hoping beyond hope that we're actually going to have somewhat of a normal race season this year, as everything else just got flat canceled last year. So we're trying to get through this COVID stuff and get back to the racing. So we wanted to bring on Matthew Roland, who is, those of you that know Katie Malone, who has been a regular guest on the podcast. She actually trains Matthew just like she does with me. He's on Team Malone, and he 2 years ago you did Chattanooga, right?
2 years ago.
2 years ago did Chattanooga, 70.3, which is in May, and this year he has signed up to do that again on his journey to be able to. Now you're doing, what else are you doing this year?
Oh, gosh. As far as Ironman brand and stuff, doing Chattanooga, Muscleman in July, which is in New York, and then I'm doing Maryland Full in September.
Maryland, first full?
First full.
First full. All right. So he's on kind of a similar journey that I am on this year, training-wise. So we wanted to bring him on because I think it's important now to start really talking about previous race experiences, because I think, you know how you're almost lulled into this false sense of, well, shoot, man, we're really going to start racing again. Well, am I ready? You know, have I been swimming enough? I think it's important to really start talking about some actual race experiences and talking about the goods, the bads, the tough things, the things that weren't so tough, but to really get us back into the groove of, all right, if you're not training as hard as you should be, if you're not following your plan like you should be, now's the time to change that, because spring break is here. We're going to be at the beginning of April, and next thing you know, bam, 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 races are going to be happening. So, Matthew, just give us a background, leading up to 2 years ago from Chattanooga. How did I think you said 2018 is when you started with Katie.
I actually started with Katie in 2017.
17. So tell us a little bit about your journey leading up to Chattanooga and just your whole journey of fitness.
Yeah. So, wow. So I've always been sort of a runner. Did track and cross country in high school, but then, like most people, through college and then in my early 20s, life kind of kicked in. I stopped running and got out of shape pretty easily. And I started to notice that a lot. Started to get a lot of weight gain and everything, like a lot of people do. And it runs in my family a lot. And then in 2016, my father passed away, kind of suddenly. And I kind of made the conscious decision at that point in time that I'm going to get in shape. And I'm going to start something in order to get me back in shape to where I feel comfortable again. And so that was really the start for me. I actually emailed Ironman brand, just kind of Googled Ironman, because it had always been a dream of mine. And one of my college roommates that I went to college with, who when we were in college, he was overweight, very out of shape, but just a great guy. And he went and played stuff with us, but was always an overweight guy. Mm-hmm. He actually did Ironman Florida in 2016. And so I called him up. I was like, dude, you stole my dream. That's kind of funny. And now me and him and a couple other my roommates, we're all on this journey together. We're going to do some more Ironmans together. So anyway, I emailed Ironman and said, hey, listen, what do I need to do? Because this is something that I think I want to do. Mm-hmm. And they emailed me back, which I was kind of surprised about, but they emailed me back and said, find a coach. find a coach. And so the first thing I did is I started looking for coaches in my area, and I just did a Google search, I think, and Katie's name popped up, and ended up Facebook messaging Katie Malone. And so that kind of started that process for me. And it's interesting because a year later, I'm wrong, I'm sorry, it was 2018. A year later, my father-in-law passed away. A year and 2 days after my dad passed away, my father-in-law passed away. And Katie actually called me the day after he passed away. We're with family. She called me and said, "Hey, I'm Katie Malone. You Facebook messaged me." And I'm like, "Well, I can't really talk right now, and this is why." But we ended up meeting, I think, a week or two after the first of the year of 2017 or 2018, and got started that way. And so initially, and I remember, because I do this about every year, she takes us through Training Peaks. And I love Training Peaks because it allows you to go back and look at kind of your progress throughout the year. So it doesn't matter how long you've been using, you can always kind of jump back to whatever year. And the first thing that I did with Katie was a swim. Now, I grew up on Lake Murray, so I knew how to swim, but I didn't really know how to swim, if you catch my meaning, right?
Yeah.
And so I went back. I think Katie's first swim she ever gave me was like an 800. Like that was the entire swim was 800 meters or 800 yards. And I think I did like 300. And I put on my comments, "I cannot do this. I'm getting sick. I cannot do this." And so it's kind of interesting, and I love seeing how, each month, each year, how you progress. So that was really my journey, or the start of my journey. I wanted to get in shape, and then I wanted to fulfill this childhood dream of mine to do an Ironman. So I met with Katie and said, "Hey, listen, I want to do an Ironman. I realize that I'm nowhere near ready, but I think I want to do one in a couple years." And so my goal at that point in time was to do one before I turned 40. I turned 40 this year in October of this year. So she has brought me along over the years, slowly but surely building me up and getting me prepared for the full.
For the full. So 2019, was Chattanooga your first half Ironman?
It was my first half. Absolutely.
And that's always the big race with Malone, Coach, and a lot of people come and go and do that in end of May. So talk about your lead up. When we talk about, like I said, you were like most people. You were coming in. You were a decent runner, I'm assuming, and then the bike portion is generally pretty easy to pick up. Get on a bike as long as you're willing to put in the work. Swim is the kicker. I mean, that's the one that's hard to get. So you're doing this, getting ready. Talk to us about your prep for as you prepared, not necessarily your training for, but as you're getting ready and the lead up to Chattanooga. How well prepared did you feel walking to when you were driving to Chattanooga for that race? How well prepared did you feel?
I felt fairly decent, fairly good about it, and I attribute a lot of that, number one, to Katie having me ready, having a plan set forth, and then following that plan. So I didn't, I'll be first to say I didn't have all greens on my Training Peak schedule leading up to it because of life and work and all that stuff, but following most of everything that I could possibly get in on a day as far as training, it had me prepared, had me ready. Now, I was obviously nervous. It was my first half. But one thing I attribute to is Katie actually held a month before the actual race. We actually went up to Chattanooga and was able to preview the bike course and the run course as well. We weren't able to swim while we were up there because of the river conditions, but in April of 2019, a month before the race, we went up, and I think we rode 80 miles that day. We did the bike course plus a few extra, and we did a brick run. And then the next day we went out and we actually ran the entire run course. So, that kind of got you prepared mentally for where you want to be at and where you need to be at for actual race day when race day hits. Now, you're still going to have, the race day jitters, which I certainly did. In fact, I remember specifically that morning walking down the ramp to get into the water, and I was with another Malone coach athlete, Beth Mullican, and we were there talking. She was trying to just calm me down. And one thing that I would tell any person that is getting ready to do their first half and probably even their first full, even though I've never done a full. And I'm going to try to remind myself this as the full comes along is just enjoy the moment. Enjoy the moment, make sure that the hardest part is the training leading up to it.
Yeah.
Because if you suffer through the training, then when you get to the actual race day, it shouldn't be as bad.
Well, we talked about that on the last podcast with the dopey training of consistent. If you can maintain consistency in your training and do that, the race, while not easy, there's nothing easy about doing a half Ironman. It's kind of the gravy or the cake of this long journey that you've
Absolutely.
been on. And so let's talk about the swim. So this is a 2021. Was this the one that you swam up a little bit, then down? Or was this, it was supposed to be like that, then it got explain the swim to us.
So in 2019, the year that I did it, it was supposed to be, and I can't remember the exact distance, but yes, you're supposed to swim upriver a shorter distance. I think it was maybe a little bit more than a quarter of a mile upriver, and then you're supposed to turn and then swim the rest of the way back down the river. The year that I did it, the river was actually moving too fast.
Pros couldn't even get up.
The pros still did it, and then they figured I guess they looked at the pros doing it and saw the struggle was real. And so thankfully for us amateurs, I imagine they probably said, if we put those guys going upriver, they may not move at all. So they actually canceled the upriver part, and so we were able just to hop in and swim completely downriver. Now they have changed it. In fact, they changed it for last year. Obviously, they ended up canceling the race because of COVID, but it's going to be the same this year, where the entire swim is downriver, and the swim is actually lengthened a little bit more. So instead of 1.2, you're actually doing a 1.4, but it's all downriver.
Yeah.
So
now let's talk about the current. I've done Augusta before,
right?
And it's downriver, and it's I tell people, it's like, man, does it feel like you're just like flying? You really can't feel the current.
Yeah, you can't.
But
or I didn't.
You can't feel it, but when you get out and you look at your watch, you're like,
right,
holy cow, man, I'm screaming down this thing. So tell us about the swim, what you felt, anything that happened during the swim. A lot of people have anxiety about, I'm assuming it was wetsuit legal.
It was.
A lot of people get anxiety about being out in the river and the river monsters and everything else. Talk to us about the swim leg of Chattanooga.
Sure. So from my point of view, and again, I'm someone, I grew up on a lake, and so I grew up swimming in a lake. I've never been one to fear lakes or rivers. So there was no type of fear as far as like the river monsters. I've certainly heard people say that, I don't know what's in the water, and it's very legitimate. I get it. I understand it, but that's never been something that's affected me. Now, what did kind of get to me a little bit was, this is a long way to go. And so for whatever reason, it kept playing in my mind, you got to swim 1.2, or I guess when it was canceled, closer to 1 mile in the water. And so that kept reoccurring to me. This is a 1,600 meter swim. So, it's a long way, a lot longer than what I'm used to doing at one time without stopping.
Yeah. Right.
And for me, when I got in, it's almost like I was, because of the river current, I was finished before I even realized what I had done, which is a very weird feeling. Now, I did, in 2019, I did Chattanooga, and then I also did Augusta. So
I think that's where I met you.
Yeah, I think so too. So Augusta, it's weird. Like, I didn't really even feel much of a current in Augusta. And I didn't feel much of one in Chattanooga either, but my swim was incredibly faster at Chattanooga. In fact, I remember the race director, we're doing the athlete briefing for Chattanooga. I remember him saying, if you're worried about the swim, don't worry, we put a bag of chips on the water, and it made it to the finish line before the cutoff. So you're good. So for anyone that's looking to do Chattanooga, I would just simply say, listen, get in, do your best. If you get tired, turn around, float on your back for a minute, catch your breath, and you'll be okay.
Yeah. That's something that people ask a lot of times when you get into the half Ironman distance, and that, even if it's a longer sprint, 750 or whatever, that it's very manageable. But a lot of people have these concerns of, I'm going to be out there, 1.2 miles. what happens if I get tired? And even non-wetsuits, you can, if you don't panic, you can roll over on your back and roll. But even if you're in a wetsuit, I mean, you don't have to roll over on your back,
Right.
I mean, you can just kind of doggy paddle for a little bit or get over on your side, and you're going to be fine. So, when you're in a river and those kind of things, I was telling Hal before the podcast with Augusta, I've got such long. I don't know how deep the river is in Chattanooga, but the Augusta, how they wouldn't have you in the middle. They tried to keep you on the side. I was so long armed as I was swimming. Man, I was pulling up,
get some grass. Yeah,
I was pulling up the grass. I mean, it is what it is, a natural environment. So, but I can promise you the whole deal with that. They always talk about alligators at Augusta, but we're not dealing with crocodiles. Alligators are going to stay away from you. If it's crocodiles, you're in trouble. But you're in a natural environment. So you get to the end of the swim, super fast, feeling good coming out. How transition go, and let's talk about the bike course.
Yeah. So one thing that kind of surprised me that I wasn't prepared for at all was leading up to the first transition. I didn't realize that there are. Because I'd done sprints for the South Carolina Triathlon Series, kind of local sprints, and even some sprints that you got to use your wetsuit on. But I'd never done an Ironman where you get to put your wetsuit on. And I didn't realize this, but there are actually, or at least for this one, there were people right outside the swim exit that would literally tell you to sit down and they'd rip your wetsuit off of you. And I'm like, man, that's pretty awesome. So that kind of surprised me a little bit. There were people there to do that for me. And then even as weird as it sounds, they had, I don't know what they call them, but I guess sunscreen people, sunscreen volunteers that would have sunscreen on their hands and would just come by you and just lather you up with sunscreen to get ready for that bike course. Right.
Yeah. Well, they ain't doing that no more.
Well, I'm sure they won't. COVID, right?
Yeah.
But
have a booth you run through.
Yeah, right. A little spray tan area.
Yeah, spray tan.
But I would just tell people, unless you're going out to really try to bust it and try to maybe PR, do something like that. If this is your first half Ironman, my number one goal was to finish. And then of course I had secondary goals that I wanted to make sure that I wanted to hit a certain time on a bike or a certain power on the bike or whatnot. But I would just tell people, when you get to the first transition, take care of what you need to take care of. Don't necessarily run through trying to get like a 30-second transition on a half Ironman like you would necessarily on a sprint. It's not a sprint. This is a half Ironman. So I would tell people, take care of what you need to take. If you got to go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom.
Yeah, I think you can make some big mistakes in transition.
Yeah.
If you're not, I mean, you're thinking, I got to get in, get out, and but relatively speaking, for people like us, I mean, even a minute, which is an eternity for the pros, but even a minute for people like us to get a little bit more lube in the right places, a little bit,
absolutely
to get that sunscreen.
Take care of what you need to take care of. Lube up, get what you need to get taken on and do it. Something Katie says to me quite often, take your time, but don't waste time.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Who was, I think John Wooden, does he say, be quick, but don't hurry? I think that's what he said. Maybe, I don't know. You can look it up, Hal. I don't know. All right, so you jump in. Now, Chattanooga's obviously up in the hills. So you jump onto the bike course. Talk about the bike. Is it a hilly course? Is it? Talk us through the 56 miles.
We were talking before this, and I made the statement. I don't like riding up hills. I'm not a hill person. I just don't. I don't excel at going up hills like some people do. I did not think that Chattanooga was overly bad. I mean, it's rolling. There was one hill in particular that was steep, and it's right at like mile 25 of the bike course. So right about halfway through it, that's got one pretty steep hill, but it's short. Mm-hmm. And then once you get past that, it's fairly smooth sailing. And even riding, through the first few miles, you're riding through the actual town as you're getting ready to head out onto the road to get towards Georgia and stuff. You got a few hills there, but they're very manageable. So I would say, for me, and as weird as it sounds, the Augusta course felt like it was more hilly than Chattanooga.
Yeah, I've heard other people say that.
Yeah.
That is. Now, is anything technical about the course? Anything that just stands out about the course?
There's some pretty good downhills. When you're doing Chattanooga, there are some pretty good downhills, and I mean like long with a fairly good grade.
Yeah.
Downhill. More so than there are uphills, at least to me. To me, the hills that you go up are more rolling, but there's one really good downhill that you can really mess up on if you're not technical with how you approach hills, because there's a curve at the bottom of that hill, if I remember correctly, that can really, if you're just trying to build speed, and you don't know that curve's coming, you can cross that yellow line and do some damage. So. But other than that, it's really not too technical. Of course, the first, and from what I understand from reading the Facebook posts from people that live in Chattanooga, they've fixed it. But in 2019, they were doing some construction in the first 5 miles of the race, and there's some railroad tracks that you have to go over and kind of be careful that your water bottle doesn't fly off whenever you go over those railroad tracks. But from my understanding, they've completed the construction around that area, so it's gotten better.
Yeah, that was a problem at Augusta. A few 5 or 6 miles in, you did, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You remember the place that would happen. So you hit transition. Now the run, and I'm trying to remember, is the run the easier part or the harder part in Chattanooga?
Good question. They're really an easy part.
Well, when people are comparing these things, they said one was significantly worse, the run or the bike, and I keep on wanting to say that it was the well, you tell me. You've done it. So.
In my opinion, this is just an opinion now, the run was harder.
Yeah.
And for me, now granted, it's a double-edged sword because I really enjoyed the run, but it was hard. Mm-hmm. The reason I enjoyed the run was there was so many people out on the run, with the exception of like the mile or 2 miles or so section to where you're running essentially up a highway. Mm-hmm. With the exception of that, because obviously people can't stand out on the highway, there's so many people on that run course. I mean, you're running at one point alongside the river. You're running through, a town where there's a bunch of bars and people out in the bars that are cheering you on and just having a good time. You run over this huge walking bridge. I mean, it's like a bridge that could fit cars over it, but it's a walking bridge just for people that walk and pedestrians that go across the river. And the people are just lined through that bridge everywhere. So you have a lot of support, a lot of people cheering you on, which is really cool. My family was there. My family actually came out for the first loop. It's a 2-loop run course, so my family actually came out onto the bridge. So as I'm running, I see my 2 boys and my wife and my mom there. So that part is really cool. The part that's not cool, at least for me, that I did not like, number one, and I can't remember exactly what mileage it was. I want to say it's somewhere around mile 5 of the run, 5, and then again around mile 9. You go up a pretty steep hill for a run, and I mean pretty steep. It was one for me as someone who I would say I'm more of a runner than a biker or a swimmer, and it was still a walking hill for me. And I think for a lot of people it was. And then when you're running up the highway portion of it, which is about a mile and a half to 2 miles, I think, there's no shade. And it was incredibly hot that day.
Yeah.
Sort of like Augusta. So not quite as hot as Augusta.
Gosh, I can't imagine.
Not quite as hot as Augusta, but it was hot that day, and there's no shade, and that was some brutal time there. But for me, the run was tougher than the bike, for sure.
So did you reach your goals? Your secondary, you wanted to finish, obviously.
I did. I want to finish.
Secondary goals.
I missed it shortly. And again, it was kind of a nonsense goal. Katie told me, just make sure your main goal is to finish. Beyond that, don't worry about what your time is. But kind of still in the back of my head, I still wanted to finish in under 6 hours, and I was 6 hours and 14 minutes.
Yeah.
So. The main thing for me was, make sure you finish and make sure, like, I'm the kind of person, I don't like getting sick. And so I didn't want to get sick out on the course, which I didn't, which I was very thankful for.
Yeah.
Cramped a little bit, but wasn't too bad.
Yeah. So what's your goal this year?
5.5 hours.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, I hear you. That's 45 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I think I'll be able to hit it.
So you must be a fast runner.
I don't know.
You don't know.
I'm trying to get there.
Yes. Yeah. You're a fast runner. I'm more of a plotter. When you talk about you used to be a runner, I was in the sports that we had to run for punishment.
I hear you.
Yeah. So it's
I hear you.
And you can tell the ones that really know how to do it. So what would you say to the first timers that are hoping that Chattanooga is going to happen? They're going to come out and they're very nervous, not only about whether or not it's going to happen or not, but really going out there and racing 70 miles.
Sure. So for first timers, I would certainly say make sure that the hardest part of the race is your training. Make sure the hardest part is your training, because if you put in the work, like you were saying earlier, if you put in the work before, it's just going to make the race day sweeter. And a good example of that was Augusta for me. So I was training fairly hard for Augusta, and about 6 weeks before Augusta, my 5-year-old fell and broke his leg.
Nice.
And yeah, right. And so when he did, I became the stay at home, for everything dad, because my wife's work, what she does for a living, she's not able to just call out of work. And so I was the one that said to my job, hey, listen, I'm basically not going to be working for the next 3 months because I've got my boy here I got to take care of.
Yeah.
And so my training went from training 6 days a week to maybe 7 days a week to maybe 2 days a week leading up to Augusta. And so I wasn't prepared for Augusta the way I wanted to be, and Augusta was miserable for me, partly because of the heat, but mostly because I didn't train for almost 6 weeks leading up to it, and my time was 6 hours and I think 49 or 50 minutes. And,
oh my God, it was hot. I mean, it was.
I just wasn't prepared. So I would say to the first timers, number one, make sure that your training is the hardest part, because if your training is the hardest part, when you get to race day, it's gonna be a little bit sweeter. Yeah. And then secondly, just keep focused on the task at hand. Don't worry about the outside influences or the outside noise that can really get into your head. Just be focused on each leg that you're doing. When you're in the swim, focus on your stroke, focus on your breathing and your technique, and making sure that you've got that tight core and that you got a nice stretched out body in the water. If you get tired, just don't stress it. Turn over and float, or doggy paddle, as you were saying. Do whatever you got to do to catch your breath, and then do that for 30 seconds or so, and then turn over and kick back into it. When you're on your bike, don't focus on so much of hey, I'm tired or I'm hurting, or maybe even my speed. I try not to focus on my speed. Instead, if you've got a power meter that you're watching, try to focus on what power wattage you're putting out. Is it your normal average power? Because a lot of things can affect that, or affect your speed. It could be really windy one day and you're not pushing out that 19, 20, 21 miles an hour average that you're used to. You may be hitting 17 miles an hour, but if your wattage is the same, it's going to keep you where you want to be for your run. You don't want to kill your legs for your run. So just make sure whatever leg you're in, just stay focused on the moment and be in the moment, be present in the moment, and don't try to think about everything else that's going on.
Yeah, and they say that's the biggest mistake that first timers make, is cooking themselves on the bike. They come out of they
Right.
feel good, especially probably
When you got a downriver swim.
yeah, Chattanooga and Augusta would be where they come out. You come out. I mean, swimming stinks for so many of us.
Right.
Where it's just like I want to survive the swim. Come out and feel. You're not supposed to just survive the swim, but you come out and you feel like, wow, I feel good. Man, I'm going to hammer the bike. And then you just hammer down on the bike, and then once it sneaks up and grabs you, it's got you.
Yeah.
And
Then you're in trouble.
There's no coming back to it. So like you
And
said,
hydrate. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah.
Hydrate. If it's a hot day, at least, I would say at least a bottle and a half of sports drink an hour.
Yeah.
So if it's really hot, you're not going to overhydrate in something if it's scorching hot outside like we have in the South.
So shifting gears a little bit. So that's the Chattanooga talk. So that's coming up end of May. Hopefully we can have you guys on. Hopefully have several of the team members on to give a race recap of this year. So we're crossing our fingers and, like we said, clicking our heels, wishing to our lucky stars that this thing's gonna happen. We'll bring you guys back on to talk about it. But wanted to touch you just had a pretty big accomplishment. You have been you've been pursuing personal. So you recently just got certified. So tell us what brought you to the point where you want to become a certified personal trainer, and what does that look like? What are you doing now, and why? What made you do that?
One thing that I really like about Ironman training and triathlon is it really puts you in a different mindset. Like when you dive into it and you invest into it, it's not just at least for me, it was never like a whim. It wasn't just something that, hey, I'm gonna do for a little while and then put up. It was a lifestyle change. And so for me, that desire to become a personal trainer, it started before I ever really knew it. And it's weird to say that. So it started before I ever really knew it, just in the kick of, hey, I want to be healthy. I want to be in shape. I want to, not die at a young age, hopefully. And part of the reason, this all happened, again, going back when my dad passed away, he was 63. He was a young guy and just in very poor health. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of the men in my family have done that. I've had uncles die at 42, at 56, and a couple others in their 50s. And, I don't want to be that guy. And so the start for me to become a certified personal trainer was just in the kick that I want to be healthy. I want my body in shape, and I want to eat healthy, and I want to be healthy. And so from there, it just kind of, over the years of training and running and biking and doing all this stuff, is like, hey, why not put into practice the stuff that you already love doing, and you can share this with other people. And so I actually started about a year ago now. I started really looking into it more and more and more, and then I took the plunge. I think it was the 1st of April of last year. I started with NASM and their certified personal trainer approach, and kind of did it on my own time as I was working my other job, and it's been great. I've really enjoyed the process of learning more about the body and how the body works, in conjunction with triathlon. Yeah. And so it's helped me too. It's helped me a lot in gains over the last year, which is really good because of what COVID had did last year to most people. I was actually able to make some really good gains without racing, which I'm pretty proud of. So excited about that. I haven't quite decided exactly what I'm going to do. I do know that my desire is to begin to work with people who have that desire to get in better shape, get in good health, get stronger, get fitter, and then wherever that leads them, whether they're in triathlon or some other sport, be happy to help in that aspect. Yeah.
Now, is there a way people can get in touch with you now if they're interested in hearing more?
Yeah, so the best way to get in touch with me really is simply through either Facebook Messenger, Facebook, call me, text me.
Yep.
So you can certainly text me. My number is 864-918-8209. That's probably the easiest way, or email. I set up a new email for this. I'm going to do fitnesscoachmatthew@gmail. So pretty excited about that.
Fitness Coach Matthew. We can put all that in the show notes.
Yeah. You've been getting calls from Australia.
That's right.
They're going to ask me about my car's extended warranty.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So Fitness Coach Matthew. So this all started though, when you go back and you think about these things, what happened with your dad, and we all things like that happen, and they become kind of benchmark moments in our
Sure.
life, and looks like what you've done is you've used that for the positive, and now not only the positive of what you're doing in your own life, but you want to be able to, when it really starts paying dividends and really starts getting special, is whenever you're able to pass that on to other people, and,
Right.
and you really start seeing other people making the good decisions and life choices that allow them to be able to have the life that they want to have. So, well, man, we appreciate you coming on. We are, I believe now, how didn't you say you ran into Matthew one time riding on the road?
Second time I met up
I
with
think
you.
so, yeah.
So he'll be famous now.
Yeah.
So we met up at an intersection out in we're in Reedville, and we ride up, and Reggie introduced me to Matthew and Haley and Beth.
Beth, yep.
And he said, "This is Hal Morris," and it was either Beth or Haley. I forgot which one it was. I said, "Oh, Hal Morris from the podcast."
From the podcast.
That was
The Big
Beth.
Shot,
That was Beth.
That was Beth, yeah.
I said, "Oh, yep, that's me."
He
So
tipped
it
his
was
hat.
hard to ride.
He tipped his hat. Yeah.
My helmet, I had to loosen my helmet up.
Had to readjust your helmet.
Yeah.
Well, man, I'll tell you what you'll find, and it's the same thing we found on the podcast, which we had wanted to do it, talked about it, kicked it around, and we're like, yeah, will it work? Will it not work? And it's really worked. I mean, people are starving for information and to be helped to be the very best they can be. I mean, they're starving
Absolutely.
for it, and so look forward to seeing your journey in that. Look forward to seeing you got quite the schedule coming up. Hopefully you're able to do all those races. That's everybody's just every day, we check Facebook to see if a race has been postponed, but we're gonna think good thoughts, and hopefully Chattanooga will be a banner race for you. 5:30.
5:30.
5:30.
That's the goal.
You're gonna do it, man. You're gonna do it.
Be interesting to see what Katie says about that when she hears this.
I don't listen to her, man. She knows what she's talking about. She's not here to defend herself. We can talk about her. She ripped me off in the swim challenge, but anyway, no, man, we're excited to see just a big community of people out just dying to get after this thing. So Chattanooga coming up, man. By the time you hear this, all of our listeners out there, you're going to be under 2 months to doing that race. So we're going to get after it, and hopefully we'll have our other races coming too.
Mm-hmm.
And for all of our listeners out there, we just encourage you. Hey, it is time to start training if you have not been training, because there are going to be some races. Now, I don't know which ones will be there, but we're going to be racing this year. So if you've been waiting, hopefully Matthew encouraged you and challenged you to get your tail off the couch and get after it. And if you need somebody to help you do that, in the show notes you can find all Matthew's information. Talk to him; he can help you. As always, you can reach out to us. We'll tell you what we know, which sometimes is a lot, sometimes not too much.
Mm-hmm.
But we're just here to help, and we just want to challenge you like we do every time, and just remind you, if you will do hard things today, tomorrow will take care of itself.